Thank you for tuning in to Tomorrow with Alex Beinstein. You can check all episodes out, radio or TV, at alexbeinstein.com. But today we're very fortunate to have William Bratton, former chief of the NYPD, now the LAPD, to discuss crime and terrorism. Thank you so much for coming in.
Good to be with you.
So first, I'd like to talk about what are the tactics that you use to cut crime in New York and LA? I know you had excellent results. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about crime went down about 60% in New York, 64%, for instance, in the Central Park precinct, and now in LA it's about 23%. What methods do you use to combat?
There are a number of things that are necessary. One, you need leadership, political leadership, and in the case of New York, Mayor Giuliani provided that leadership. Here in Los Angeles, two mayors that I've worked for, Mayor Jim Hahn and now Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa. Two, you need resources. You need the cops. Cops count, and cops are the difference. In New York City, we have the benefit of a lot of cops, so the change happened much more quickly, the crime turnaround. In Los Angeles, it's taking us longer, many fewer cops, and that necessary ingredient is critical. The third element is a philosophy of policing, and that's the community policing philosophy we embrace. And community policing is all about the prevention of crime, the focus on preventing it rather than the focus on solving it after the fact. And lastly, it's the idea of using technologies, increasingly DNA-type technologies, and CompStat, which is an accountability system, a management system, which is the heart of what I do. And CompStat has four elements to it. Timely, accurate intelligence, get information quickly, analyze it. Two, rapidly respond to it. Three, develop effective tactics to deal with the identified problem. And four, relentless follow-up. You keep looking at it. You just don't think you've solved a problem and move on. That you got to keep going back to make sure it's not coming back.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with Stephen Levitt, an economics professor at the University of Chicago. One of his theses is that crime went down when abortion became legal. In other words, a lot less unloved babies came into the world, and therefore there was less violent people. What do you think of this thesis?
I think it's a very flawed thesis because it doesn't take into account birth control pills, which predated abortion. And if that was the case, then the crime reduction should have occurred 10 years earlier, maybe 20 years earlier, because birth control, which was much more widely used than abortion, where was the impact from that? So it's a very flawed argument.
So now the same measures that you use for crime, have you used that for terrorism?
Actually, the good news is, and my remarks at the Aspen Institute are focusing on this, that in the 1990s, in the United States, we got it right in terms of learning how to deal with traditional crime. And violent crime throughout the United States went down over 40%, property crime by about 30% after almost 30 years of straight increases. Now in the new world, the new paradigm, the new fear, terrorism, many of the same systems that we use, CompStat, appropriate use and focus of policing, leadership, all the same elements are critical to success. But the other element is the understanding that to deal with terrorism effectively, you also need to have local police involved. Because the reality is terrorism is not just an international threat, it's a domestic threat also, the homegrown terrorists that the British have experienced with so much difficulty the last several years.
You obviously have some expertise when it comes to combating terrorism, like you just mentioned. Would the position of Homeland Security interest you at all? I know Rudy Giuliani was quoted in the New York Post about a week or two ago saying that he would definitely look at you if you were to become president in 2008. Is that a position that you would be interested in? Well,
for the time being, I'm very happy where I am in Los Angeles. We've still got some unfinished business there in terms of continuing to make that city a safer city. The New York Post was actually extrapolating a comment that the mayor had made in New Yorker magazine, in which he had mentioned that he thought he could conceive of the two of us working together again at some point in time, and then the Post extrapolated that to that specific position. I have a policy of never commenting on a job I haven't been offered. That certainly I'm flattered to be thought of as having capabilities that might be requisite for that position. But for the time being, very happy in Los Angeles, great city. We're making great progress. Work for a great mayor who gets it, who understands the importance of, the critical importance of the prioritization of public safety. If you cannot have a safe city, you can't have investment, you can't have building, you cannot have jobs created, tourists won't come, taxes won't be generated. It all starts with public safety.
Now, keeping the homeland safe is obviously something you value very much. Are there any 2008 candidates whose policies you think would most protect us? Are there any candidates you're looking to endorse?
Well, one of the great strengths of our political process that we are currently engaged in is you get a chance to, over these many months, get a real sense of the candidates. And so we're still really in the early stages, and we'll have to wait and see where they are with the different ideas that they might have. I think certainly Mayor Giuliani on the Republican side, Mrs. Clinton on the Democratic side, have great strengths when it comes to understanding what needs to be done about crime, because they were both engaged in it in the 90s, and on the area of terrorism, that I think they both appreciate that also from the New York experience. But we're fortunate that we've got a wide range of candidates running on both parties, and we're going to see over the next number of months that who ultimately comes out of that pack, if you will, to lead the pack. And they're going to have to focus on terrorism, and what I'm advocating is also going to have to focus on crime, because throughout the United States, unfortunately, crime is beginning to edge back up again.
Interestingly enough, you've worked obviously in a Republican administration with Giuliani, now a Democratic administration in Los Angeles. Do you see it as both parties care about crime quite a bit, or is there one party that is really more tougher on law and order?
The Republicans have always been seen as the tougher party on crime, but the reality is that President Clinton, Democratic president, actually did more about crime, working with a Republican-dominated Congress, Newt Gingrich. But the reality is the most success America's ever had on a national level was with a Democratic administration. And the importance of what happened in the 1990s was that the federal government did finally, for the first time in the last half of the 20th century, get engaged in dealing with local crime. And ideologically, that's something that the Republican Party normally does not want to do, get engaged in local affairs.
That's something I'm sure you obviously were well aware of this year when Homeland Security dished out the money for anti-terror funding. Los Angeles actually got a decrease in the amount. Mayor Bloomberg of New York got an increase but said it wasn't substantial enough. Do you think the Homeland Security got it wrong by giving only 55% of their funds to first-tier cities, but an astounding 39% to second-tier cities?
Well, the position that we have in Los Angeles, New York, Washington, Chicago is that the assignment of money needs to be risk-based. And clearly, those cities are much higher up on the risk assessment scale. And I don't think you'll ever see any mayor who's totally satisfied with what he's getting from the federal government. And this year, our allotment went down. Last year, it had gone up. And we're doing okay. We always seek to get more if we can, because unfortunately this is going to be a problem that's going to be with us for the rest of my life, rest of your life, and our children's lives.
A lot of social...
We're going to need to wrap this up.
We'll get one more question, and then we'll... Sorry for that. One more question, and Mr. Bratton. Facebook, MySpace, obviously a lot of big-time social networking sites that a lot of the youth use, college students, people a little above college. How have you seen that affect crime? Have you seen any cases where people have been using that to stalk people? People put a lot of information on those websites. Has that created a hazard for you from what you've seen?
Well, without speaking to that specific site, there's no denying that the information age, the age of technology, has significantly reshaped the crime problem. Identity theft, sexual predators using the web. We really still do not fully understand the scale and the scope of the impact of these emerging technologies on crime, other than the fact that that's a new paradigm of policing that I've gone through now 4 of them. 1970s, 1990s, 9/11, and now the new information age paradigm. The idea of policing is going to have to get much more technologically advanced than we have been for most of our history.
Mr. Bratton, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for making our city safe.
Pleasure to be with you. Okay, thank you.
This was Tomorrow with Alex Beinstein. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, you can see all these episodes at alexbeinstein.com. So long.